Hey everyone, Fina here from Fina Reads. Welcome back to my channel. Today with the July wrap up, and I have to tell you, this was a fun month. Not just because of the readathon that I participated in, Battle of the Bands, over at the Bookastronomers Discord, and I was part of the winning team. Go Team Comedy! But also because I read a bunch of good books. Why don't I tell you directly about it without a whole lot of preamble, right? Right. Starting with the statistics. Let's get our math brain on, because that's what we love over here. So in the month of July, I read 7 books, which is less than what I read in the last readathon. It's not the month where I read the most books in, by far not, but I read 3,126 pages, which means I had a bunch of chunkers on my list. And that's a-okay with me. Genre-wise, I read 2 fantasy books, 3 sci-fis, 1 sci-fi fantasy mix, and then 1 thriller. So very SFF heavy this month. 2 of the books were Kindle Unlimited reads, 2 were library books, 1 of them an ebook, 1 of them an audiobook, and then 3 regular books that I've read. 3 of them were self-pub, 4 trade published. And then from a rating perspective, it has actually been really nice this month because I had 2 5-star reads, 4 4-star reads, and then 1 3-star read. 2 of my books were rereads, but I will tell you about that in a little bit. And then that is not a good one because I started 3 new series instead of continuing anything or finishing anything. I just started 3. Talking about the books that I actually read in the month of July, starting with the fantasy genre. Sufficiently Advanced Magic is a lit RPG fantasy, which is a newer subgenre for me. I've read a handful of lit RPG books before, but this I feel is the first real proper light RPG book that I've read, if that makes any sense. Here it is about Corin, who is prepping himself for his first journey into the tower. The tower is where you pass tests and where you just go through certain puzzles and fights with monsters and whatnot to advance your magical abilities, to learn new magical abilities, that kind of stuff. And in this world, everybody has to go through it once to get their first magical ability assigned to them, and then from there they are going to school where they then learn to practice this ability, grow it, etc., etc. What I really loved about this book is the way this was written felt like I was playing a game, and I think it's super fascinating. I think that's what lit RPG is supposed to do. So, you know, for those of you who are a bit more experienced, don't laugh at me. But I found this fascinating. In addition, I loved the characters. They were all so much fun. It was just a blast to follow that friend group on their journey and on the big quest that they had. And I'm definitely continuing with this series by Andrew Rowe. The next in the recommended reading order is On the Shoulders of Titan, which I've scheduled for August. So I am super excited in continuing the journey with this one. The next book I want to talk about is Gunmetal Gods by Samuel Akhtar. This is a reread for me in preparation of book 4 coming out that now has a release date. Yay! September 3rd. So I have to hurry up with rereading the other 2 books that are also chunky. This is the smallest one. This was reread number 3, if I'm not mistaken, for this one. This time I read it again in physical form. The last time I listened to it in audio format, but I wanted to immerse myself fully into the book with this reread, so I remember all those little details. And I think if I've read between the lines correctly, this book is actually rather important for book 4. We will see. I will let you know once I read book 4 if that is the case. I have an older review of this book that I will put up there. It was one of my first book reviews that I've done on this channel, so I'm a little bit awkward. If you want to deal with that, you're welcome to watch it. If not, hang around because I'm working on a redone review of this one. Anyway, the general gist for me is I still love it. I still love these 2 POVs of Micah and Keva that go back and forth, which are both on opposing sides in this story. It's a world that is close to war between those 2 different sides that Micah and Keva are on, and you get to view the war and the aftermath from their perspective, which is incredibly interesting because they both have very different beliefs, very different opinions on how a world should be run and which is the right belief and all that kind of stuff. And it's just an incredible character study throughout the entire book. If you haven't read that, and if you're a fan of grimdark, and I mean dark. So there are some really gruesome scenes in there, not just when it comes to gore and blood, but also just, you know, situations that you don't want to find yourself in. I highly recommend reading this book. It's one of my all-time favorite fantasy series, and I will always recommend it with the caveat of you really have to like dark stuff. And lastly, this was also a buddy read with Chaz from Bookish Chaz. So he and I and one of his other patrons, we all read it together as part of his patron buddy read. It was so much fun to have someone to talk to while reading this. And I'm also putting Chaz's review for this video up in case you want to hear someone else's perspective on this book as well. Moving into science fiction, because this month somehow was a really science fiction heavy month, which is not a problem. I love a good science fiction book, and I'm realizing I think I'm more a fan of classic sci-fi. I read Isaac Asimov's, and I still have my tabs in here. I read Isaac Asimov's short story collection Nightfall in July, and holy macaroni, this was so good. This short story collection got a 4 stars from me. I had 8 5-star reads in here and 4 4-star reads. There are 20 short stories total, so 12 of them were 4 stars and higher. And I think I only DNF'd 2 of them, and that was mostly just because the topic was not of interest for me, but the rest, literally everything was good in here. And they were so imaginative. They are so different from each other. Yes, the tone is very similar, but just what the story is about couldn't have been more different from short story to short story. Incredible. The way the book is set up, it's 20 short stories. They all have a little intro by Isaac Asimov where he explains in 1 or 2 pages how the story came about, a little bit just background knowledge to the story, some fun facts about the story. And usually I skip that kind of stuff, but I actually ended up reading them all. Because I love his humor, and in those intros his humor really shined through. And I had several laugh out loud moments when he was explaining how the story came about. And 2, it was actually really interesting to read what his thought process was on how the story came together, because some of them he wrote out of his own motivation, some of those he wrote because it was a request that he received from a magazine or something like that, somewhere really interesting. So it was just fascinating to read about his thought process and how he approached, especially those where he was asked to write about a certain topic. My favorite out of these short stories is the name companion Nightfall, which was voted the best short story ever in, I think, 1964. Nightfall is about a different planet that has multiple suns. I forgot if it was like 7 or something, 5 or 7. And for the first time, for the people living off the planet, all of those suns will be gone. So it will actually be night for the first time ever. It was never dark on this planet. And it was something that the people on the planet have foreseen happening. And they also have foreseen what will happen to the people the moment the sun goes down and there will be full darkness, aka complete insanity. And the story is basically about a group of scientists prepping for this event, and it was fantastic. It was so well written, and I was literally glued to the pages, like, I need to know what's happening. So highly recommend this if you wanted to actually try his writing and see if it's something for you, because his other series are quite a commitment. I highly recommend this one. It is the next sci-fi book is Monster by Duncan Swan. That was a total surprise for me because that was kind of a random pickup. Last month I was still in my trial phase of Kindle Unlimited, and I wanted to just test if Kindle Unlimited is the right thing for me. This was a huge surprise. Usually I'm not into this the world is dying and everything is falling apart type of Armageddon scenarios with a heavy military theme, which both of those are very prevalent in this book. But it was just such a blast to read it. Maybe I needed it at this moment because I had some heavier and bigger and more denser reads, and this was more on the entertainment side. But anyway, it worked for me. So in this world, there's a huge explosion at CERN, the scientific institute thingy-majig in Switzerland. There's a word for that, and I know this word. My brain just doesn't get to it right now. Huge explosion, and there's a big black cloud growing faster and faster from that explosion, and that cloud kills people. in various ways. True post-apocalyptic drama, terrible scenario, people are dying, this very typical Hollywood-like extreme. The book actually shows you two timelines, which that's one of the more fascinating things that I liked about the book, is you get to see characters from the aftermath directly after the explosion set in Europe, and then you get another view about 90 to 100 days later set in the US, and the cloud is about to roll over the US. And you get to meet a variety of people from all kinds of backgrounds, although it is very police or military heavy from the people you get to meet. And you get to see that situation from all of their points of views, and they all have opposing views or have different goals for their journey and for their time within the book. Incredibly fascinating, very well written. I mean, it was incredibly entertaining. It's a super fast read too, even though it's close to 500 pages. The only problem that I have with this book is it has kind of a cliffhanger ending, and book 2 was supposed to be released in December 2021. Well, clearly we do not have December 2021 anymore. And I have Googled a little bit, and I've tried to figure out if there's any word anywhere about book 2. Unfortunately, there isn't. So that's the only problem with the book. If this is something that sounds interesting to you, just know the story is not finished and it cuts you off in the middle of the story. It's supposed to be only a duology, so at least we only need one more book for it to continue. But yeah, you're left kind of hanging, and who knows when the story will continue. If any one of you knows, let me know. I would love to read volume 2 of Monster, because I genuinely want to know how this ends and how they solve this whole situation, because I don't know how do you get out of something like this. And then my last sci-fi read was also more classic sci-fi, just Fahrenheit 451, also a reread for me. I've read it the very first time shortly after I moved to the US, and interestingly enough, this was one of the books that my husband told me to read, because it's one of the bigger books that, every American kind of knows about and is typically read in high school, yada, yada, yada. And I have never heard about it. So either it's because I'm ignorant, or it's because it's not as common in Germany. So I don't think I've heard of Ray Bradbury before while I was living still in Germany. Doesn't mean no one knows about him over there. It's just not a book that you read in high school, or that is very as much known as it is here. Just in case you don't know what it is about, it's about a fireman. Firemen generally don't take care of burning houses, etc. They're actually completely fireproof, so there's nothing about that. They're actually there not to prevent fires, but to burn stuff, in particular books, because reading books is frowned upon. People don't want you to read about something that goes against your belief or that would upset you or any kind of stuff. So a long time ago, the government decided to burn all the books, and the firemen are still there to find books that are still flying around and continue to burn them, so no one has access to them. Montag, who is a fireman, somehow he is compelled to grab one of the books that he's supposed to burn and start reading them, and actually is surprised about what he finds there. So he starts grabbing more books and reading more and realizing, hey, these are actually kind of good. And then he tries to come up with an idea on how can we stop this, because I actually think books should be available for everyone and everybody should have access to that. What I liked about it, it's more on the opinion that he tries to get across is, the way I understood it is, he's saying books are important, but books are not the solution to everything, because a book can provide you information, but you still have to form your own opinion on certain things. So basically he's saying books are not the solution for everything, even though he is saying, hey, we still need books. So I found this balance very interesting, that he's not saying, okay, in a world where books are being burned, stopping that and getting books back will solve all the issues. Not at all. And that's a very interesting message I find in this book. 2 more books to go. Moving to a book that technically is sci-fi, but has so many fantasy elements in there that it kind of fits into both, and that is Perilous Times by Thomas D. Lee. I'm holding up the beautiful UK cover. The US cover looks very, very different. For this book, I already have up a dedicated review. Take a look at that and can listen to that review if you want to get all the detail about this book. That's why, short summary, this is technically a post-apocalyptic sci-fi, so we're set in the not so distant future. Environment is a big problem now because air is muggy, the water is terrible, several animal species are non-existent anymore, and we are actually at the brink of collapse. So that's the big sci-fi element. The fantasy element is this is also an Arthurian retelling. We have knights from the round tables that keep being resurrected every time Britain is in peril. Again, a bit more detail in my spoiler-free review, so go check that out. But this was a big surprise for me. And the last book I read in the month of July was a thriller that was The Middle of the Night by Riley Sager, which was my first Sager book that I read. It was part of the Thrill Chill Kill book club over at the Bookish Drummer Discord. And that was something I was actually really excited about. I was a bit worried because I didn't know if my library hold would come through. It did, basically last minute. So it was one of the last books that I've read in the month. And I have to say, I'm meh on that one. This book is about Ethan. We are in the now, basically. Actually, it's pretty funny because the first chapter is on like July 16, 2024. And I thought it was funny that they were so close with that date to release date. And I thought it would have been funny if that first date in the book would have been the release date of the book. Anyway, today's world, Ethan Marsh is moving back into his childhood home because his parents are moving to Florida. And they didn't want to sell the house quite yet, so he's moving in basically back to his childhood home. He's a little bit hesitant to do that because when he was 10, which is now 20 years ago, if I remember correctly, I think he's 34, his best friend disappeared from his backyard. Ethan and his best friend were spending a night out in the tent, and while they were spending a night out, Ethan woke up the next morning and his best friend, I think Billy is his name, I'm terrible with remembering names, is just gone. And they basically called him dead at one point because they couldn't find him. They couldn't figure out how he disappeared. So yeah, he's a bit hesitant moving back into his childhood home in a little cul-de-sac, but he's also excited about restarting his life there, if that makes any sense. And the book, of course, is all about Billy's disappearance, and it's told in two timelines. One of mostly Ethan in today's timeline, and then also when he was 10 from multiple views from all the people that were somehow involved in that story. It took me a little bit to get into the story. Riley Sager's writing style, I can't put my finger on it, but something was weird for me. But once I was in there, I was completely with it. And I was like, oh my God, what was happening here? And he throws you back and forth from suspicion to suspicion. Some are very obviously not the right way. Some are where you're like, ooh, okay, that's interesting. And you get very slowly, you get reveals of what happened back in the past through those different POVs. The one thing that I enjoyed about this book was how he stitched these reveals together then with a jump back in today's time. The big letdown for me was the reveal. I was sitting there, I was like, this is stupid. I'm sorry. I thought the reveal was stupid. There were so many things happening at the end. First of all, they felt very convenient. But then on the other hand, they all happened so close to each other that I wondered, so why did none of that overlap? It just didn't make any sense, and it was just weird to me. And then when the final reveal came out, I was just like, no, I'm out. This is dumb. I can't. I definitely will read another Sager again because I think there is a reason for the hype. And as I said, right, the way he told the story and the way he connected the timelines was well crafted, and I truly enjoyed that part. The ending just didn't work for me, so maybe I'll try a different one where the ending doesn't go into the direction this one goes. We will see. These were all the books that I was reading in the month of July. What did you read in July? What was your favorite book that you read last month? Let me know down in the comments. And then don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you want to see some of the dedicated reviews that I mentioned throughout the book for Gunmetal Gods and Nightfall, for example, if you want to see those as I'm prepping them and getting them ready. Don't forget to hit the like button for this video if you liked it. And then I hope I see you soon with my next video. Till then, have a great rest of your day. Bye!